for episode 6 of Out of Band. I'm Anne Leslie.
My name's Jennifer Wennekers.
And my name is Faith Opiyo.
And today we're talking about money.
Yep.
So, yeah, you see, we're already laughing because it's already...
Do we want to talk about money?
I think we have to talk about money.
Talk about money. It's like Jerry Maguire, show me the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about money because we don't talk about money enough. And I don't just mean three of us. I mean, just in general, it's a huge taboo. And we're going to dive into, should it be, right? Should it have this aura of secrecy around it? And what kind of prompted the conversation today was just a random chat that I was having with a friend of mine who was telling me about a friend of hers who had basically brought up a situation in her work where she realized she was being, there was a big pay differential for somebody who was a guy doing more or less the same job, actually exactly the same job. And she brought it to her people manager, was told, yeah, touchy subject, I wouldn't bring it up if I were you. And I was just kind of scandalized by that. And I realized when I kind of mentioned it to a few people that this isn't an isolated occurrence. So I just, you know, what's your take on that, right? Because it just kind of went, what?
I mean, I'm flabbergasted, but at the same time, I'm also like, yeah, I'm not really that surprised because money is a really taboo thing. Like, it can differ per colleague, it can differ per organization, and it can also definitely differ per specialty.
Yeah, there's like.
But should it be a taboo?
No.
That's the thing. Why should it be a taboo? You know, that's I think the reason that I really wanted to kind of bounce this idea off the two of you is why should it is a taboo, but why? Like, we all have it. Some of us don't have enough. Some of us have arguably way more than any human could ever know how to spend. But it's sort of just this thing that's common to all of us. And yet, I don't know, it's just something that makes people hugely uncomfortable talking about.
So full disclaimer, first and foremost, we're not going to name numbers in this conversation. That's one thing, but we will be open about certain things. So for me, I believe in discussing money with professionals that have a similar skill set as I do, because I believe that the more everyone knows how people are being paid, what kind of rewards you get within an organization, or the way you can negotiate, the better it is for the entire community. It equalizes things, basically. So for me, I'm not gonna blabbermouth to every random person, hey, look, this is what I'm earning. But at the same time, I do believe in having honest conversations with professionals who are trying to go to the same job as you do, or trying to get to the next level, for example, and share the same interests and same information.
And I guess, I mean, there's like platforms like Glassdoor, right, where people voluntarily share more and more. I don't know how accurate it is, but I guess there is some level of transparency. But what do you think, Faith? Yeah, go on.
I learned the hard way. I think that it is important, especially for us women, to discuss it, because I have realized, at least from the discussions that I've had with also other ladies, is that we tend to get the raw end of the deal. And maybe it's just because we're not aware of what our male counterparts will be asking for. And therefore, you know, we tend to be shy. Like personally, whenever I'm asked, okay, so how much do you want? I don't have an answer to that.
I know.
It's so difficult to answer that question. And I don't know, it's just, I don't know. I think sometimes you just feel that you don't deserve it. And therefore you tend to underestimate your capabilities. One of my managers just told me that you just underestimate yourself, and unfortunately, the money that you get into a company with is basically your life.
So, all right, this is really important. Okay, this is super important. We were doing the prep for this. I mentioned this lady, Cindy Gallop, who's a sort of a social media phenomenon. She used to work in advertising, and she's a massive, massive advocate for women in every realm, but particularly with regards to money.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she's done to combat what you're describing, Faith, which is, you're asked the question, what are your salary expectations? She developed a bot, and it sounds really stupid, right? But she was trying to make the point that we need to train ourselves to, somebody asks that question, you come out with a response, and it's like muscle memory. You don't have to think about it, and you overcome this hesitancy of, do I deserve it? Am I worth it? Am I going to look greedy? All of the social conditioning that we tend to grow up with. And she has this tip, which again, I kind of laughed at when I first saw it on LinkedIn, but it's actually quite powerful, which is, think of the highest number that you could possibly say without laughing and use that. Because what you're saying about the baseline, right? You can always come down. And I learned this being a seller. You can always come down. You will never go up.
That's true.
But
not in an initial negotiation anyway.
But again, this is also where knowledge is power, because if you know what your peers are earning at, for example, the same company or at different companies, then at least you have somewhat of a baseline that you can think of when you're actually negotiating. Like, and this is not necessarily only for women, but also for men, for example. If you know that companies, for example, heavily undervaluing a certain skill set, then you as a community will be less likely also to go and work for that organization.
Yeah, but I mean,
word spreads around.
Yeah, well, totally. Just coming back to what you were saying, Faith, about that when you get asked that question, you could be in an interview and the interview is going like swimmingly well, and then that question comes along. What does it make you feel? There's like uncomfort. Yeah, I can already see like the shoulders are going. Like, what is it? Like, what's the feeling? Put some words on it.
Normally, I feel that I would be disqualifying myself if I put if I put a value to it. I would easily disqualify myself if I go too high, and if I go too low, I know that I will also be underpaid. So answering that question, I find it very difficult, and I always try not to answer that question. I will say, this is what I always make a detour. I say, this is what I have, and I'm not going below that.
Which is fair.
And no, it's not a good strategy, because they'll give you just maybe
a little
$1
more
above.
Yeah. No, but what I mean is it does set an anchor, right? So unless you're massively dissatisfied with your current salary, at least it is an anchor. I wouldn't say that's a ridiculous approach, but I mean, what you could do probably is, when you say that, you've set your baseline and say any move brings risk, right? So there are people who are without judgment, who are very, very attached to their salary, very attracted to money. There are other people who see money much more as a hygiene factor, which is, I just don't want to be worried about my bank statement.
Yep.
And it's okay, I think, for you to be able to say, right, well, I need a risk premium, right? Because changing in from one role or from one company into another, I don't know anybody who's done it for less. You might maybe
there are no. Oh.
Let me just tell you what happened. So anyway, I mentioned that I was working in I just don't want to overshare, but anyway, I was working in a company, and I was trying to move into security. And in the company that I worked for, the package was really good, right? But I needed to change careers.
Okay.
So for me, being me and being silly as I am, I thought that it would make sense, at least for me, to go back a little so that I can make that move, because I was earning well, but I needed to change.
I would,
mean,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, I can
Sorry,
understand.
and just to just to clarify, it's not the base. Obviously, you're not going. There's no way that I would go down on my base. It's more of like the package, right? You have companies that give you RS, what are they called?
Bonds.
Yeah,
Bonds,
stocks. There's some companies that will give you insurance and all that. So I'm talking about, going back on stocks, for example, which is a big chunk of your salary.
I mean, it is something that I can understand, though. Like, if you're going in an extremely different role that requires different skill sets, then I understand you making at least the decision to take a little cut, either in your benefits or in the baseline salary, if you, for example, have a specific roadmap cut out for yourself and know that you will get at a certain level within a certain time. I mean, that's also the case if you go, for example, to a different organization. You will always have changes in, for example, whether or not you get a lease car, whether or not you get more or less holidays, extra health insurance, extra whatever. So there's always that differentiation if you switch jobs. But I do believe that the whole baseline salary is something that you do need to inform yourself and keep the discussion basically going on.
Yeah, there was a move I was about to make, which was it would have been the silliest move of my career, whereby, the net would have been my gross. So I would have actually been going all the way. Yeah. Thank God I didn't make that mistake. So there are people like me.
No, you're too tough on yourself. Honestly, you are too tough on yourself, because I've been reading a lot about this topic, and some of the advice that's out there, particularly for people looking to pivot into a new domain. So me moving from financial services into consulting, I remember being told that I should expect to take between a 14 and 60% pay cut.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's huge. And I said, hang on a second, I'm newly divorced with 3 children, like,
that's not going to happen.
That's just not going to happen. I have, no. And they said, well, you're going to have to be realistic about your expectations. Now,
I hate that. I hate that. Realistic about my expectations. What do you mean?
Well, all it did was confirm that I wasn't going to be working for that particular company. But it is, so I live in France, and while I love France for a lot of things, there is a certain culture around fitting into boxes and conforming and ticking, the criteria. Do you match the profile that we have for such and such a thing? And switching from a domain into another is not how it works here. You choose your lane early in life, so that you choose your lane when you're in your teens and you stay in your lane. And this idea that you would have the crazy propensity to switch lanes, they don't make it easy, so we generally on this podcast don't call out specific things, but I'm going to call this out because it has been significant for me. It was that where I work currently, which is IBM, allowed me to make that change. And I banged on the door of a lot of companies and said, yeah, you're interesting, whatever, but no. And that's what was different here. And it's remarkable enough to be worth calling out, because I'm in the position I'm in now, I can help other women do stuff similarly, right? It's sort of paying it forward, and creating these opportunities and showing that it can be done is part of it. But yeah, I'm kind of drifting a little bit off the topic, but it's just to say that telling people that they have to take that massive pay cut if they want to change. And when we're talking about trying to get women into security, or even men, anyone who wants to get into security from a different domain, I don't know that many people who have the financial mattress that would allow them to take a 60% pay cut. You know, it's a big ask.
I mean, it seems also a little bit depressing if you're in that kind of situation, because if you have to stick to a path that you chose as a teenager for the rest of your life, I don't know. For me, that would cause a very early midlife crisis and a couple of burnouts.
Welcome to France. No, and it is kind of actually, that's probably a topic maybe for another podcast. Like, I remember being a teenager. I don't know about you. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I think there are so many kids who kind of get pushed into something because they have to do something, which is okay. Like, there's no problem with that, as long as you have the freedom to be able to kind of, you know, find your way. But when you're told you are an accountant and you will always be an accountant, or you are whatever, yeah, I think there are a lot of very unhappy people because of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring
No.
But anyway, back to the topic. Have you found any workarounds? So Faith, you were talking about some of your workarounds and sort of, you know, you kind of divert the conversation.
Not answering the question.
Jennifer, what's your kind of go-to technique for coming out as best you can?
So when I get that question, I make sure that I orientate myself prior to going into that conversation by looking at what peers would earn in that position at different organizations, or maybe at the same organization if I can find that on the internet or in my circle. Never go less indeed than what you have, or maybe even a little above that. And that's more just to ensure that you can indeed live as securely as you can. I mean, taking a pay cut is sometimes necessary if the job, for example, is really, really interesting. You get a lot of satisfaction out of it, but at the end, you still need to pay your bills.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I've emphasized throughout this entire conversation, I'm just really big on being able to talk with peers about things. I mean, the better you inform yourself and the better your peers are informed, I think the stronger you stand as a professional.
Yeah. And to add to that, just, okay, one of the things that I have now found out is find yourself a male ally and ask them how much will they ask for. Ask them how much, you know, you have colleagues, right? And they know you, they know your work ethics and stuff like that. I openly speak with my colleagues about it, and my male counterparts have told me, if you're going to move, you ask for this and nothing less than that. So yeah.
Whereas, you know, coming back to that opening comment I made, right? This conversation with a friend and a friend, and we were talking about it, and I said, what was it really that was bothering her? You know, sort of being told, don't raise the topic, it's a taboo, it might be damaging to you. I was it was almost like it was going to be career limiting for her that she bring up this topic. And she said that it wasn't so much about the money, it was that what the money represented. So there's somebody doing the same job as you is paid more than you. It's like you're not being valued.
It stings.
That really bugs me sometimes. You know, you're doing the same exact job, and maybe sometimes even performing better than the counterpart, but then the counterpart makes X times more than you. Why?
Yeah.
Because they dare to speak out, they dare to negotiate.
They know how to sell themselves.
And it's acceptable, right? So this is one of the other things that I've learned, is that I learned to be a seller, not because I thought I was good at selling. It turned out I was pretty good at selling, but it was by accident that I found this out. But what I realized was that I was really good at negotiating for other people. But I could not replicate the same level of confidence advocating for myself. So I could go in and I could like play hardball, and I would negotiate contracts, and I would, you know, get the result. And I remember, like you were describing, Faith, right? That feeling like, I'm not worthy. And I'm going to go, why can I not conjure the same level of self-belief for myself that I can do when I'm negotiating on behalf of somebody else for something that arguably doesn't matter as much? And it touches on so many things. It touches on sort of self-worth, a feeling of I'm going to be judged for being self-interested. I'm going to be judged for being greedy. I'm going to be judged for being money grabbing. And I was like, no, but where did I get all these kind of negative labels? And I didn't grow up in a toxic environment at all, but there's just some kind of osmosis of social conditioning that gives us these inner beliefs that kind of make us feel that we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, but I think that that's basically just connected to the entire feeling around we don't talk about money, we push it under the carpet, and it's just something that is there, and just accept what you're being offered.
Yeah, that it's not okay. I did one time, I'm smiling now thinking about it, kind of go, oh God, I took such a risk. I remember moving between roles, and I happened to have a title of director, which was like I was a figurehead, right? It just happened. But I had the name. Right? There wasn't much behind it, but I had the name.
Was that a token?
Kind of. And I remember going into an interview with 6 men in a very, very posh hotel lobby. And it was all very sort of jovial and whatever. And they said, right, well, here's what we're offering you. And I went, no, I'm not. I was way more ballsy than I would normally be. And I said, I'm not happy with that job title. And they said, well, that's what's on offer. And I said, well, I'm currently director, and the only way I'm planning on going is up. And I remember,
Good girl.
I remember their faces, especially there was one guy who knew me very well from a previous life, and he was there kind of going, whoa,
just fears.
I'm impressed.
But my point on that was, it felt a little bit reckless, and it might have been. I don't know that I would necessarily do the same thing again, but it actually worked out okay. And what it kind of showed me was, you just sort of need to evaluate. You get a feeling about whether or not a company wants you, right? It's kind of hard maybe in a first interview, but again, it's easier to roll it back, kind of dial it back a little bit. And at least, you know, they were hiring me for quite an aggressive business development role. And in some ways, it was sort of me showing them I'm not a pusher.
The skills, yeah, it shows the skills, it shows the image that you can portray. Absolutely, yeah.
I was going like that.
But you did it. I did
it, yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, remember I was saying about the bot. We need. I'm not suggesting we need to sit in front of our screens with a bot, but it comes with practice. I think a lot of it we can learn with practice.
Yep. And you don't necessarily need a bot for that. You can also use your, again, peers or friends or whatever for that. Hell, even your partner or your guinea pig.
Ladies, so what then can, is there a way that, if let's say you find yourself in a situation whereby you've already undersold yourself and you're in the company and you like what you're doing, but you would prefer to have your package reviewed, is there some advice that you have for people like that?
Well, if you are in that kind of a situation and you know for certain that people, your colleagues, are paid more for the same type of activities, it's a difficult discussion, but I would go to someone in management or your direct manager or whatever, show the evidence, talk about it, and also discuss with him or her, either of the options, what the possibilities are. I mean, most of the cases, if you are willing to talk openly about it and to actually bring forth why you should be increased, you can negotiate something out of it.
And what of the situation that Anne brought up in the beginning, whereby the girl went to the manager and the manager said it's a taboo. So what will she do? What should she do then?
Then it becomes very difficult, I guess.
Tricky. Yeah, so that's when it gets tricky, and I don't actually know what is going to happen in that case. If anything, she might just drop it. But the thing is that if she drops it, I would anticipate that her level of commitment to her job and to her company and her job satisfaction will
Diminishes. Yeah.
You know, so everybody loses. Like, she's going to lose because she's not going to develop, she's not going to feel good, work is no longer going to be fun or motivating, the company will lose out on the best of her, so everybody loses. I'm just trying to think, what's the best response? Like, there is legislation around this, you know, but it's tricky trying to go that route.
I mean, if you go that route, then there could be a possibility that you get into such a disturbed relationship with your employer that you might not want to end up working there anymore.
Also,
it's an option, but it's not a safe option.
If I were her, knowing myself, I'd just go.
She might
go to the next. I'd just go to the next one.
Maybe.
I find it very difficult to talk about money. And at least previously, I found it very difficult to talk about money, and I will just leave.
Or depending on the size of the company. I mean, I think this lady's working for a relatively small company, so the alternatives are not huge, right? But there are companies where a lateral move goes, or kind of a sideways and up, that kind of thing.
Yep.
In some organizations, there might be possibilities to do that, because it can be tricky to get organizations to kind of reevaluate for the same scope, right? It's sort of saying, I'm not going to pay you more for it, even if morally and ethically and whatever, you can build a case for it, but it can be a hard sell for a company. But if you kind of change the job description a bit, and you might move to a different team or whatever, it might be a solution, so that you don't have to take the risk of completely changing organizations, and the company doesn't with you. So.
But lateral movement, at least in companies that I've been, don't really, unless you're really changing. I think the lateral movement doesn't really increase your package that much.
Well, it can,
unless it's so far. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, unless it's like in such a big organization that you're really moving to a really different position in a really different department that is so far from your current role that it doesn't even touch it anymore, basically.
And a way of saving face, like, this is just one isolated example, and I don't think we could probably build a truth out of it, but somebody that I used to be in school with was in a very major consultancy and realized that she was massively underpaid. Like, the differential was shocking. And she brought it to HR, and it was so bad, I think that they were probably worried about a court case, because it was that bad. And the optics on it were terrible, and for some reason, instead of just kind of paying her, there was politics involved, and they preferred, and she in agreement with her, right? She didn't lose out at all, but it was a way of saving face for people who were involved, who had been probably to blame in some shape or form, either because they hadn't done anything. It was less that it had been a conspiracy, but more that there'd just been, people had noticed and not taken any attention of it. But that was, she did move. She moved kind of into a sideways role. They rectified the differential, and that case worked out pretty well. But I'm guessing a lot of people in that situation do what you're suggesting, Faith, which is basically screw that. I'm off.
I actually, when I moved to the Netherlands, so I was talking with my colleagues, and they were telling me that how they're able to bump their package was just moving, because you're coming from a different country, and wait, I was coming first of all from Russia. I'm African, gonna end up paying me either way. So
sorry.
There was so they were saying the way to bump up your salary is just do 1 year or something and move to the next one and move to the next one, and that's how they went to millions.
There are times as well, I'm just thinking about one of the things, Faith, where you said you were like really, really silly. There are times where you just don't have leverage, right? So I'm thinking back to 2010 when I was full-time stay-at-home mom, and I was trying to get back into work, which is really, really tough, probably in all countries, but particularly hard in France. And I remember having somebody had helped me out and it got me an interview, and I remember asking, and I bolstered myself, right? And I asked for a reasonable amount, and the guy who owned the company laughed. Actually laughed. And I wasn't asking for an unreasonable amount, right? I'd done, like your question, Jennifer, I'd done the research, and he laughed and he went, after the amount of time that you've been off the job market, are you serious? And I was there kind of looking at him going,
sounds a bit like an asshole.
Well, the thing was, I really wanted the job. Like, I really wanted the job. And I knew how hard it was going to be for me to find work elsewhere. And I was there kind of going, yeah, I'm not liking the attitude. But on the other hand, I'm going to get this attitude everywhere. And I just had to suck it up.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have any leverage to negotiate, because having, you know, sort of early career experience and then 10 years of a gap, which is huge between the ages of 23 and sort of 33.
Yep.
That's when a lot of your kind of the foundation of your career happens. But yeah, I remember being laughed at, and I remember going, yeah, I'm going to get myself into a position where I'm not going to be laughed at anymore, because it was horrible. That was a really horrible experience.
Well, now they no longer laugh at you.
When the time I mentioned that I was silly, it was actually, I was trying to move into a Big Four company, and I was so excited about it. Big Fours.
Big Four is different.
Big
Big Four
Fours.
has ranged salary
Oh God.
levels.
So anyway, I was trying to move to a Big Four, and I was really excited about the company, the job, the perspectives, everything just ticked the box. The only thing is that the pay, girl, the pay was painful. And thank God, you know, I came home and I was so excited, and I'm telling my husband, yeah, I like this job and I really want to move, but then, you know, I have to take a cut because I'm going to be losing stocks and stuff like that. And he's like, Faith, snap out of it. No, he's like, and that's why it's important to surround yourself with people like this, because he's like, Faith, after your certificates, after your masters, after this, you're going to go for a cut like that is worth a graduate's salary? No. I'm like, no, but then it gives me perspective, you know, as in, at least I can I can see myself growing in that role. Faith, no. So yeah, I didn't make my silly move.
No, but that's something that you do, something what you mentioned right now. There's also a difference in organizations that have a fixed hierarchy and a fixed salary range model, basically, and companies that are a little bit more free with that. And you do need to be aware of that if you are soliciting at an organization, basically.
Yeah. That when they have like very strict grading and levels, and this is the threshold. There's only so much you can do with that.
Yeah, they told me. So when I tried to negotiate after that, right? When my husband told me, no, you're not moving there, I tried to negotiate. I tried to negotiate, and they did bump it up, but they could not go above the level.
Yeah.
What I was getting was above that level, and they're like, no, they cannot go above it. I'm like, okay, sorry, people. I got bills to pay. Yeah.
So I think what our message is, it shouldn't be so hard. We need to talk about it more. We need to practice being brave and asking for what we're worth.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
Knowledge is power. That's all I want to line here.
Glassdoor. Glassdoor helps.
Or your own community. Basically, anywhere you can find the information.
Yeah.
If you find the internet scary, which is funny if you're working in cybersecurity, if you find the internet scary, just talk to your friends.
Call a friend. Yeah, totally. So are we good for today? We wrapped
Think
up,
so.
we wrapped up the money topic.
Let's wrap it up. And probably next time, let's bring some men to give us
Yes.
tips about this topic. I have a very good person in mind.
How do they do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It
How
would
do
be
you
a good
sell yourself?
discussion.
Yeah.
so like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks all. Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao.